Welcome back to another episode in the Scrapy Tutorial Series. In this episode, we will see how we can handle pagination. For example, as well we'll see on the website we are currently scrapping, quotes2scrape.com. If we scroll down on our codes, as you will see, it has a button, and if we click Inspect and open DevTools, as you will see, this button has an href. As you will see, this button is actually a link which leads to the next page. So if we click this link, we go to page number 2. Now, as you will see, if I keep clicking next, we keep having this button next until we go, let's bypass this and go straight to the last page. I think it's like page 10. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so up to page 10, we have a button here called next. But on the page 10, the button disappears. So what we want to do now is tell our script to keep going on the next page, dropping the quotes, saving them, and then keep going on the next page until this button right here doesn't exist anymore. Now, when web scrapping with Scrapy, proxies are a must. Without them, websites can detect too many requests coming from the same IP address, and they will block you. That's why using a good proxy provider like NodeMaven, which is the sponsor of this video, is key, and they offer over 95% clean proxies, helping you avoid detection. Now, the only reason I recommend NodeMaven is because I use it for my own projects and for my client projects, and I only be using NodeMaven for months now, and that's why I partner with them. It's the only proxy provider I trust and I suggest for everyone. Plus, they let you choose between residential and mobile proxies and even specify details like your country for more precise scrapping. Start using reliable proxies by using the link down the description, and when you go on your checkout, make sure you click apply coupon here and type Michael to get 2 extra gigabytes at checkout. And also, for the first 30 users that sign up using my link down in the description, and go here and click Get Trial and click here to apply coupon, you can use the code MICHAELFREE and you'll get the trial for free. So make sure you use it, because why say no to free stuff? Now, I'll be covering in a feature episode how we can use proxies with Scrapy, so make sure you stay tuned for that. So first of all, we need to define the button. So let's say next page equals to, and then as we did on the last episode, response.css to locate the next button. So let's do that. And here we need to place the CSS selector of that button. So let's go ahead and find that. And go to next. Now, as you will see, it's very easy to locate it. We can just use the class next. So let's do Control F to test it out. So .next, and then right below it is the A tag. So a new tip for the CSS selectors: if you want to get an element right below the element you define, so below next, below the element that has the class next, what you can do is put a greater than sign and then put the tag right below it, so the A tag, because what we actually need to take is the A tag. So let's go back. Now, as you'll see on the other elements right here, in order to get the text property, what we did is column, and then text. But in this case, we need to locate the URL right here from the href. So as we did here for the text, what we will do is again say column, but instead we don't need to get a property, we need to get an attribute property, and then from that attribute property get the href. So what we will do is say attribute and then pass a parameter to the attribute like a function, and the parameter we will pass is the attribute we need to get, which is href. Then, like we did for the quote, we'll do that .get, and that's it. Now what we will do is say if the next page exists, then we need to tell it to get the URL from the href. So let's say next page URL equals to, and then we will say response.url join and I'll explain why we do that. And then next page. Now, as we said, next underscore page returns the attribute from the href, which is this one right here. If we click edit attribute and copy that and paste it here, we get slash page slash 10. But if we just try to visit this page, it's not a valid page. We have to put the domain first of all and then the page. So what URL join does is it takes the URL from the response from the website we are trying to visit and then joins and then basically adds this path name right here. And now that we have the new URL, what we will do is say yield, and then what we will do is call this function again. So basically we will say scrapy dot request next underscore page underscore URL, and then as a callback we will call the parse. So this parse function calls itself again, but this time it calls itself with the new URL. So what we do every time is call the parse function the first time, we get the quotes, and then if there is a next page, we call the function from itself again with the new next page URL. So let's go ahead and test that. So we'll say scrapy crawl, the name of our function, so quotes, dash o, and then we will say quotes.csv. So now if we go in our CSV, we get much more results. We get all the quotes basically from all the pages. And to validate that, let's go on the last page. And let's find the last quote, it is ... and as we will see, we have the same quote here. Now this is one way to handle pagination. Now if we didn't have a next button, for example, or if the next button didn't include a URL, so for example our button has an href with the URL inside, which is perfect in our case, but some buttons are JavaScript buttons and they don't contain an href, but once you click them, it runs some JavaScript code which redirects you to the next page. But in case you don't have that, but the URL format is the same, for example, as the page number on the URL, and you know for a fact there is 10 pages, what you can do is instruct the script to go through 10 pages. Let's see how we'll do that. So for example, in that case, what you will do is, let's remove this one, let's comment it out. We will comment the start URLs, and instead we'll define a function called start requests, and here we'll pass self. Now this is a valid function, it's not a custom function. It's a function that the Scrapy Spider has, and here what we can do is define a base URL, and our base URL will be this URL, but not including the page number, like that. And then what we can say is for page in range, and we'll say 1 to 10, because we know for a fact there is 10 pages and the first page starts with the number 1. And then what we will do is, like we did right here, let's copy it. We'll say yield scrapy.request. We will just define it like so, URL equals to f, so we can pass some variables here. And then we will say base URL, and then here we will define the page. In our second method, what we do is we know there is a fixed number of pages, 1 to 10, and then we just make a for loop with each page. We run the scrapy.request, and then we pass each page number as the URL and then parse it. So on our second method, if we know that the pagination uses a predictable pattern like page numbers in URLs, then you can use a loop like we did here to generate the next page URLs. So basically we are generating the next page URLs using the for loop, and then we scrape each URL. So let's test this out. And we should have about 100 results again. Okay, so what the range does is it goes from 1 to 9. Okay, yeah. So right here, if you want to get 10 pages, you actually need to give it 11. So let's run it again. And there we go. But as you will see right here, it gets them not in the same order as the pages goes. But it's fine either way. Now, the previous method I showed you, let's comment this out, and I'm gonna comment this one right here. As you will see, we had to manually construct the URL again and then pass it here. But there is actually a simple way to do that. And instead we can say yield, then response dot follow, and then we will follow the next page, and then we will pass as the callback self.parse. Now this basically does the same thing, but in this scenario we don't have to reconstruct the URL. It will get the URL directly from the href, and it will get the full URL regardless, because as you'll see, what we are doing, we were getting the same value as we see it right here, /page/4/. But if we click it, it doesn't go to /page/4, it goes to the full URL. And this is the difference between the .follow method and the previous one I showed you using scrapy.request, where we had to reconstruct the URL. This updated method I showed you is useful in this scenario right here if you want to use the same URL as the href, but this might not be always the case, and you might want to reconstruct the URL and pass certain parameters. So in that case, you will need to use my first method. Now there is countless of ways to handle pagination, but those are really the main ones with Scrapy. Now another common thing that we find with the pagination, with the next button, is that sometimes the next button doesn't disappear completely, but sometimes, as you will see in some other websites, the next button is just disabled. So you are not able to click it, but you can still see it. In that case, our script will still try to go on the next page, but it will fail. So what we can do in that scenario is we need to specify the selector for when the next button is disabled. For example, in order to see it as disabled, sometimes you will just have the disabled attribute here, like so. Or something similar, it might be a class like .disabled or whatever it is. You need to find that, the selector that defines if the button is disabled, and then go to your code and say next_page_disabled, copy the above code, and just pass also the selector that defines your button as disabled. So how we can do that is, let's remove the attribute here, and for example, if we had an attribute like I showed you disabled, then we'll define it like that. And here we can say if next button and not disabled, and this button doesn't exist, then go ahead and follow the page. Now again, this can be sometimes something else like a class. So in that case, you can say, for example, .disabled. But since we want to get an attribute, in case we have the attribute disabled here, then we would do something like that. But let me know down in the comments if you have another method that you like to showcase, or let me know if you need extra help if the pagination methods doesn't work with the website that you want to scrape. So yeah, that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you don't miss my future episode on this series and other videos I do as well. I do mostly on web scraping, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And yeah, with that said, see you in the next episode.